Senesi, Pope, Jones, Gakpo, the list goes on. Harry Wilson, there's lots of names linked to Spurs at the moment. And we've been able to predict which ones are most likely to be real. We were able to identify that Van Hecke was going to be a player Spurs would target, and lo and behold, the next day after we informed you of that, the links came out and the bids have come out. So we've been able to use that data now to evaluate which transfers are likely real versus which ones are made up, because Johan Lange has not been seen or heard of from Tottenham since the end of the season, and his future is supposedly in big doubt. So how are we continuing to identify players? It appears to be a data-led model this time, which makes much of this predictable. So let's go ahead and have a look at some of the players we're linked with. Let's start with the one that's certainly true, and that is Senesi. This should be confirmed in the next 24 hours. Every major reliable transfer source has confirmed its validity, and he makes complete sense from a data perspective, and that is because, as you can see here, he is in the top percentile in world football in top 5 leagues for through balls and progressive passing of a player of his position. He is absolutely elite at this. He is the type of player who's going to add a lot of creativity from the back, and I'm sure you've heard this amply already this season, but let's also compare him just side by side of Mickey van der Ven to show you where this really makes sense, because Van der Ven's strengths are completely different. They are the pace he has to perform on a high line. They are carrying the ball with his feet, but they are not being able to distribute the ball from the back, and they are not his aerial ability either. Now, one reservation I do have this pairing, even though I think they're excellent, is that they both really lack on the aerial duels front, and that will be an area to watch. How are Spurs going to manage them? I believe we're going to manage it using our fullbacks. As I said, the expected goals from open play with the ball at the feet is a lot better with Van der Ven, whereas it's going to be a lot better via ball distribution via Senesi, and it adds a whole dimension. Now Spurs, as all teams play out the back, they've got a player who can play mid to long range passes as well. But let's have a look at some of these other links that Spurs have got, because some of these do completely make sense as well. Now, Van Hecke is another one that is genuine. We know that is authorised. This is more than a rumour. But why do Spurs want him? Well, we know Van der Ven's stats last year took a bit of a hit, but even when he was at the peak of his powers, you can see they have some similar strengths. They both like to attempt those through balls. That is absolutely key. So I'm feeling this one is a genuine link. Every major transfer source is saying it is. The other thing that Christian Romero there has over Van Hecke again is those aerial duels. I'm noticing a trend here of Spurs not being concerned about this being a trait for their centre-backs, which implies to me they're going to be using fullbacks and midfielders to cover this up within their systems around set pieces. But this one is genuine. He'd be a brilliant signing for Spurs. I think in terms of value, he is worth that big fee Spurs are paying, but the key is if they're going to get him for £70 million, they have to be selling Romero for slightly more. That's my view. But you'll get a more consistent version of Christian Romero, but you'll also get a slower version of Christian Romero. That's the only thing to notice. But I think consistency is king. I would rather have a 7 out of 10 every week than a 10 out of 10 some weeks and then a player completely missing the others. Now, you can, by the way, get access to all these graphs if you like them. If you are a Legends tier member on YouTube, you can view them. There's a link to my Drive folder where you can then go over the content I've just shown you and re-look at that graph, but only the content that I've already published as an archive on YouTube. But let's talk about some of the other players we are linked to this season at the moment, because the most recent one that's come up is Harry Wilson. And I want to talk about why this one's come up. Now, he's not really an out-and-out winger, and that really shows in his stats again. You can tell he's not the player who's going to a byline and cutting in. Successful dribbles are low, progressive carries are low, crosses completed are also low, despite being a very good crosser of the ball. Now, you might be thinking, how can you have low crosses completed, but be a good crosser of the ball? Well, that's because he doesn't make many crosses. I think he's as close to a winger as someone like Xavi Simons in the sense he starts out wide, but he cuts in and he creates. He will be a versatile player that can play across all the wings, available on a free transfer at a peak age. I think in a season where you've got Kulusevski coming back off an injury, Mickey van der Ven coming back off an injury, Xavi Simons out, you need a stopgap. You need an experienced stopgap across that front line to help cover that role. And I think that's where Spurs are thinking here. He's not going to set the world alight, but he's going to be a player who can take people on. He can win offensive duels, and He can create chances. I actually think this one is quite sensible. If they could get him on a 2 or 3 year contract, he'd probably be quite easy to sell the year after once Xavi Simons is back. I'd watch out for this one. I think this one could generally be real. Now, let's talk about one which I don't think is real, and that is this one here. It is Nick Pope, and there's a strong reason why I just can't see this one happening. He has some of the worst distribution in the league. Actually, when I put his numbers up, in world football, top 5 leagues, he was one of the worst players in the world when it comes to distribution, playing in top 5 leagues. He is not good at this at all. He ranks in the bottom 5% for long pass accuracy, for completed long passes, and for completed progressive passes. In the way Spurs are moving with signing players like Senesi, who are progressive, Van Hecke, who's progressive, Robertson, who's progressive, looking for a central midfielder who's progressive, this would completely contradict that. So I'm going to say that this one is not true, and to ignore this one. The free transfer link that's going around, I believe, is actually a link to Harry Wilson, if it's true. Now let's look at another one. This one I haven't seen concrete links to. I think it just makes sense as a signing. Getting a homegrown player who can be box to box, play in that middle, may well be available, is Premier League proven. Curtis Jones, why not? I think this completely makes sense. It adds diversity to our midfield in an area we desperately need progressive passers. And just that forward pass accuracy is sublime. He loves passing into the final third. And I think exactly what we need. You don't need a player who's rife at making interceptions. We've got lots of midfielders who can do that. And that's a weakness of his that we don't need to worry about. You look at this wheel of strengths, and I'll get to comparing him to Romero now. I think this one, for me, this one makes complete sense, this one. So let's just bring up that comparison to Bentancur here. And Bentancur's stats, by the way, did take a big hit under Frank. So I would say they do look a lot better in the previous 24-25 season, but still nowhere near Curtis Jones level. We should take the data with a pinch of salt, because obviously Jones has been playing in a better side than Spurs, and Bentancur's had a major injury, so take those with a pinch of salt. But still, you get a good feel for the type of player. Curtis Jones, I think, would be a fantastic signing if we decide to go for him. But let's see if we actually do. The next one I want to show you actually is a bit about the Curtis Jones development arc, because it gives me some reassurance that not only is he a player that's, got a lot of ability, but one that's been progressing in the right directions. I put this together. Let's look at how many chances he's creating, even in that really tough season that we just had, where Liverpool kind of fell off a bit. His defensive duels improved dramatically, but that to me shows a similar way in which Bentancur dropped off was because he was asked to play a more defensive role. But he's still, therefore, I think the 23-24 season is a better representation of his ability, not the last one, in the same reason I wouldn't use Bentancur's last season stats as a reflection of the player. And they're really strong. His expected assists is really, really strong. And yeah, I think he's another one who, if we're not linked with, I think we will be at some point this season, and he makes complete sense. And there is another Liverpool player whose the links have started to come out today, another winger in Gakpo that Liverpool might be looking to upgrade and move on from. And yeah, I think he's another one who does kind of make sense, because he adds a few extra layers to things we've been lacking this season. Again, it's that ability to get in the box and that ability to just be a bit more of a goal threat, win those offensive duels, take players on, to have those dribbles, get those XG numbers up with the team by getting yourself into goal scoring positions and having shots. That is what Gakpo would bring. And I think we need to stop worrying about finding these almost like perfect players that completely set the world light. Consistent, well-structured squads win at the end of the day. And Gakpo is one that's been struggling with slots football over last year, but before that, he was very much in the elite category, and I think we should strongly consider him. So yeah, let me know what you think. There's also some more names. I want to just bring up a quick summary of all the wingers, because wingers are a key topic for us. But people who are kind of saying no to Savinho, I just want to highlight, when you look at the players available right now and you look at the elite wingers, Spurs are not realistically in for Doku, Yamal, Elise, Saka or Rodriguez. They are elite players already at elite clubs, not for sale. So Savinho really does seem to come up as the best of the rest. And that is why I think Spurs are so heavily linked with him. It's not that he's perfect, it's that he's the best of the rest. And yes, he doesn't score enough goals, but he adds so much in terms of take on and threat in a way that Spurs need. Well, look, as I said, you can access all this data after my show to view it. You cannot distribute it to other people, you can only view it yourself, but you can view that yourself afterwards to have a run through of the episode's visualizations if you're a Legend Tier member. If you're not, anyway, big up the OSO 33 crew, and as always, which player actually would you like to see Spurs signing this summer? And come on, you Spurs.